Today we'll wrap up the series of an amazing life of an amazing individual with a great video tribute. You'll catch it coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Fox 43 studio. We're on part 3 of Robinson Oscar Everett. Thanks for coming back in, Dad. You know, as I said the other day, it's so tough to prep for anyone. For a parent, it's even more tough. And as I said, one of the best ways to do it is to go and look at how people have described you, or even how you described yourself. And I wanted to highlight that. Another thrill today is to be able to show that video that Chuck Stokes did of you 4 years ago, back in February 2000. We're going to wrap up today's show with that video so that viewers can get a real feel of covering things we may have missed over the last couple days. But this piece in the Judge Advocates Association publication talked about all of your students are as devoted to him as he is to them, to you. Almost every place he goes, he sees a former student. He has an encyclopedic memory. On visits to our military sites, he has a habit of writing a note to everyone he sees, from the commanding generals to the lowest ranking, to come visit his court, the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. One day an E-4 arrived at the court unannounced. Judge Everett was delighted and remembered she had been one of his drivers. He made her queen for the day, gave her a personal tour, and took her to lunch. You know, one of your court clerks said, no surprise, he is very busy, but he loves people. He knows no station in life. He is always very inquisitive, whoever you are. You have something he wants to know about. You have something he wants to know about. And I tell you, that just encapsulated the last couple days and encapsulated your life. Your involvement of really being interested in others, Dad, has been there. When did that start? Can you think back as to when you began being interested in others?
I can't say there was a beginning point. I guess I was sort of born that way or trained that way by my mother and dad. They love people, and they sort of trained me to love people.
You think both of them love people? I mean,
absolutely.
Really? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I know we talked about that a couple days ago about both your mom and dad's involvement, both in rearing you, both as being attorneys there in Durham for so many years. You know, and that really segued well into y'all's involvement with the U.S. Supreme Court. I think it was back in 1954. The three of y'all were sworn in together. Can you share with the viewers what that was like 50 years ago?
Well, it was quite an experience. It was the first time in the history of the court that a family had been sworn in together. I guess one reason for that was there hadn't been that many women lawyers. And so the three of us appeared in April of 1954. I was at the Supreme Court recently for something and had them check as to when I was admitted, and they had a little bit of an error. They showed different times for us, and they corrected that. So and it was April, and about a month before Brown was decided. I frankly had thought that it was on the same day that Brown was decided, but it was different.
You then went back 40 years later, as we talked about yesterday and the day before, to argue your first trip as both, not only as a plaintiff, but as the attorney for the plaintiffs in the U.S. Supreme Court, and then went on to argue 3 cases following in that same thing. 4 cases over a 9-year period in the U.S. Supreme Court, Dad. I mean, an attorney having the opportunity to go once, but you were up there 4 times over the last decade.
I'm sure they got tired of me.
Yeah, tired of it. I mean, what was that like? Can you share with the viewers? We got a couple of minutes.
Well, one of the things you try to do is get prepped for it. I was given moot court preparation. I think in one of them, one of the people who was testing me was a lawyer who currently is the Solicitor General, Ted Olson. So we had some very fine people who, you know, sort of put you through the paces that you'll go through with the Supreme Court. One of the things I did that I think was the most successful was to use a map showing how, very vividly, how the gerrymandering had been done. That was in the first case, Shaw v. Reno. And I noticed those justices were sitting there, particularly Justice O'Connor, just fascinated by that map. And if you looked at the map, you knew exactly what had happened, no matter what people said. I thought that would be very good, very effective, because I remembered a case we had where the defense was in our court of military appeals, where the defense said that there had been racial motivation in the challenging of members of the court-martial, that persons had been taken off on the grounds of race. And the counsel for the defendant had chessmen, red and white, or black and white, I guess, and used them to illustrate, pulling one chess block off to show that a white had been taken off, or an African American, as the case might be, use that for illustration. And I remembered how impressed I was. You're sitting there listening to a lot of arguments, and it's nice when somebody does something different. Right. So I decided I would do something different by having that map sitting there confronting him during my entire argument. And it really worked out.
It did, absolutely. Y'all came out 5-4 in your favor, and then later 5-4 in your favor, and then a couple not in your favor.
5-4 against us.
Against, that's right.
I think switched positions.
Is that right? Yeah. We got a couple of minutes there. One thing we didn't highlight over the last couple of days is the Center on Law, Ethics, and National Security at Duke Law School, which you founded in 1993. Of course, we got a segue into that video that Chuck Stokes did back in February of 2000. But I wanted you to put a quick plug in for the center.
Absolutely. I'd been teaching national security law at Duke, Carolina, and Wake Forest. I decided it would be very important to have some courses and some organized study and research in the field of national security as it related to legal issues like terrorism, things of that sort. So I organized a center, and we've done a lot of things. We have conferences, we've sponsored lectures. Our executive director, Scott Silliman, is on TV almost all the time now talking about terrorism, things of that sort. So it was a situation where we hit something that was very, very important, and I'll extend an invitation to all of your viewers to come see us up at Duke and learn what we're doing in that center.
Great. Lastly, Dad, the biggest inspiration for you as you think back on your life, what has been the biggest inspiration that's kept you going, kept you focused, and just kept you strong?
I think primarily family, but hopefully also religious faith. I guess that's a basic thing. And then having a wonderful family, my parents, my wife, my 3 sons, that keeps you going and helps motivate you. You feel you want to do something that they can be proud of. And hopefully I've done a few things that you and your brothers and your mother and my parents were proud of.
Thanks so much for being with us this morning, Dad.
A pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. We got a video coming up. You'll see exactly why not only we, but so many are so proud of Robinson Oscar Everett. Robinson Oscar Everett was born in Durham, North Carolina on March 18, 1928, the only child of 2 Durham lawyers. From the time he entered the 1st grade, he was designated a brilliant student. While at Durham High School, an article written in the school newspaper gives us a good sense of his youth. Robinson Everett, a 15-year-old senior, is quite a contest fan and enters all that come along. He has won all kinds, from state academic contests to why I like to listen to WDNC in 50 words for a $50 war bond.
In his prize-winning entry, Robinson wrote that the WDNC programs, quote, furnish fuel, unrationed and unlimited, for a magic carpet to carry me to any world. Although few know it, Robinson is a very accomplished violinist. His talents also run to sports, especially archery. As a wrestler, he competed in the intramurals and wasn't at all fazed when he was eliminated in the first round after 15 seconds, but went out for the tennis team instead. The local Durham newspaper also wrote, if professors picked all-state students, like sports writers pick all-state sports teams, one of the leading choices and probably the captain would be Robinson Everett, a senior at Durham High School. Young Everett, who just turned 15, entered 4 out of the 6 annual statewide academic contest and scored a triple slam, carrying off the first prize in mathematics, Latin, and history, and placing second in physics. Following high school, Robinson attended Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire for 1 year before returning to North Carolina to begin courses at UNC. His mother said, it seemed that Robinson was having too much fun. He had begun pledging a fraternity when his father pulled him out of Chapel Hill and shipped him off to Boston. In his first year at Harvard, he won the Wendell Scholarship as the outstanding freshman. He made Phi Beta Kappa and received a minor H in basketball. He received his A.B. magna cum laude in 1947. That same year, he entered the Harvard Law School and became an editor of the Harvard Law Review. He was graduated in 1950, ranking 4th in a class of 445. That summer, he returned to Durham and moved in with his parents. He immediately began preparing for the state bar exam. He also spent some time helping out his parents at their law office. Normally, Robinson and his parents made every effort to leave the law at the office. The only known exception to that rule was during the period of a week to 10 days prior to Robinson's bar exam. During that time, the Everetts ate out. They would seek a table in a favorite restaurant and throughout the meal propound questions and come up with answers. Several times they found themselves in disagreement. If another member of the Durham bar was eating in the restaurant, his opinion would be sought for weight and authority. The elder Everett, for a time, was frankly skeptical of the Harvard approach to North Carolina law. He became reconciled, though, after his son passed the bar exam with flying colors and was hired as a member of the Duke Law faculty. At age 22, in 1950, he was the youngest faculty member ever hired at the Duke Law School, if not in all of Duke. During the Korean War, Robinson left Duke and served on active duty with the Air Force. Upon his release, he became a commissioner of the United States Court of Military Appeals. Later, he returned to Durham to practice law and subsequently joined his parents' firm, which was renamed Everett, Everett, and Everett, otherwise known by Robinson as Mother, Dad, and Me. In 1954, Robinson, along with his mother and father, were the first family trio to be sworn into the bar of the U.S. Supreme Court on the same day. In the 60s, he served part-time as counsel to the Senate Subcommittee on Constitutional Rights, which was then chaired by Senator Sam Ervin. In the 70s, he was active with the American Bar Association's Standing Committee on Military Law. In the 80s, he chaired numerous sections and committees for the Federal Bar Association and received their highest award for his service. In the early 90s, he served on the advisory committee for the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure and Evidence. He is a life member of the American Law Institute and of the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, and is currently chairman of the North Carolina Continuing Legal Education Board. Somehow, over the years, he's remained active with each of these, as well as many other organizations. He continues an active practice with the Everett Law Firm in Durham, and is of counsel to the Raleigh law firm Everett, Gaskins, Hancock, and Stevens. Recently, he served as counsel for a large New York firm when they opened their Charlotte office. A highlight in his legal career came when Robinson had the opportunity to argue before the nation's highest court in a case where he was both a plaintiff and the attorney for the plaintiffs. The case was Shaw versus Reno. It dealt with North Carolina's congressional map, which Robinson claimed was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Although this was a novel cause of action, the court had the wisdom to rule 5-4 in his favor. At the time, the Raleigh News and Observer wrote, "The Duke law professor was surprised when the U.S. Supreme Court decided to hear the case. When the High Court sided with the Durham native, the outcome shocked the nation, even his allies." "I was very, very surprised," said Melvin Shim, one of the 5 plaintiffs in the lawsuit. "Case law and previous High Court rulings did not bode well." But few people who know Robinson were surprised that he took on the challenging case, given his legal pedigree. His father, R.O., was Durham's first city attorney, and in 1923 led the unsuccessful fight in the General Assembly for anti-Ku Klux Klan laws not passed until 1953. His mother, Catherine, was 3 months out of the University of North Carolina Law School in 1920 when she became the first woman to argue and win a case before the North Carolina Supreme Court. In 1996, again as a plaintiff and attorney for the plaintiffs, Robinson successfully argued Shaw versus Hunt in the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Rehnquist wrote the majority opinion, agreeing with Everett's goal of a colorblind society, and struck down the 12th Congressional District in North Carolina. The district was redrawn, but the redistricting battles continue. Robinson Everett was probably not certain why he decided to become a teacher of law in 1950, right out of law school, but he taught for 1 year, left temporarily, then rejoined the law faculty in 1956. He has served continuously at Duke since that time. Besides writing articles on military law, criminal procedure, evidence, and other legal topics, he published a textbook, Military Justice in the Armed Forces of the United States. Since 1991, he has taught a national security law class at the Wake Forest Law School and continues to teach the same class at both Duke and UNC. In 1993, he founded the Center on Law, Ethics, and National Security at Duke. Professor Everett is probably most famous, or infamous, for his early morning criminal law class for first-year students. Remarkably, he continues to read and reread cases, many for the 10th time or more, in preparation for his class the next morning. Last semester, he was particularly moved when he read one first-year student's unsigned teacher evaluation. The student wrote that they were from a broken home and did not grow up with a father in the house. But if they could choose a dad, they couldn't imagine anyone they'd rather have than Professor Everett.
The case before us this morning is the mandatory appeal in the United States against Curtis, and we have 2 issues that will be considered this morning.
In February of 1980, President Carter nominated Robinson to ascend to the bench of the United States Court of Military Appeals. The court is made up of civilian judges and is the military counterpart to the United States Supreme Court. When Judge Everett took office in April of that year, he was designated Chief Judge. His term expired in September of 1990, and he is now a senior judge of that court. Much case law was established under his 10-year watch, but his service may best be defined by the words of then Secretary of the Army Michael Stone at a courtroom ceremony in 1990. There, the Department of Defense honored Judge Everett with their Medal for Distinguished Public Service, the highest civilian award given by the Department of Defense. The Secretary of the Army was on hand, along with Justice Antonin Scalia of the U.S. Supreme Court, to present the award. And I quote, "This award is given to those that have singularly distinguished themselves in their contribution to the Department of Defense. And for 10 years, Chief Judge Everett has done that. He is a true champion of the servicemen, reviewing personally each case heard on appeal, a truly remarkable effort to assure a fair trial and equal justice for all. He has been a great leader in his profession, leading his court to new heights. Everett, it's called. It is recognized worldwide as one of the most progressive, innovative, and eminent courts in America because of his personal vision, dedication, and sensitivity to the needs of military justice. It's difficult to imagine that Robinson could delve into business ventures while maintaining his legal career. Amazingly, he has had a long relationship with television, beginning more than 3 decades ago when he helped launch the NBC affiliate in Durham. He later went on to have majority ownership stakes in an independent TV station in Greensboro, a CBS, now Fox affiliate in Wilmington, a Fox affiliate in Fayetteville, 2 CBS, now Fox affiliates in Southern California, an independent TV station in Wilson, and since 1995, he has helped his middle son buy and transform an independent TV station into a Fox affiliate here in Myrtle Beach. If that wasn't enough. Location, location, location. Almost 35 years ago, he and his mother purchased the 250-unit Poplar Apartments and 40 adjoining acres in Durham. They then owned some 90 acres of land across the street from Duke's West Campus. Much of the acreage is still undeveloped, although we hear that Robinson will begin construction on his Century City East within the year. In addition, many other apartment developments in Durham, Raleigh, Fayetteville, and Wilmington are either owned or operated by the Everetts, including the 104-unit Holly Hill Apartments, where Robinson and his wife Lynn raised their 3 boys and have resided since 1968. Then there are the hotels, like the Sir Walter Raleigh, and the office buildings, like the Snow Building in Durham, and the strip malls in Chapel Hill, and the large real estate tracts like the ones in the Research Triangle Park and in Wilmington. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes lucky. The true joy of business for Robinson has been helping to grow the Tar Heel state, which he loves so much. My wife, Sina, is a psychiatrist, and she says she never met a better put-together person than Robinson, said Mel Shim, a close friend since the 50s. The parts fit harmoniously. I don't know what his parents did, but they did it right. Robinson was a loyal son and was particularly close to his mother, Catherine, whose law practice spanned more than 7 decades. And when she died in 1992, at the age of 98, Robinson had lost not only a mother, but a partner in many of his legal and business ventures. Despite all of his impressive achievements, what has always mattered most to Robinson has been his family and friends. As a husband, he is loving and kind, even if his constant travels put some tough strains on his remarkable wife, Lynn. Beginning in early 1980, he was in Washington at least 3 nights a week for more than 10 years. During that time, his wife raised their 3 boys, as well as doted on a very senior mother-in-law who lived next door. Lynn's strength during those trying years was miraculous, and you can't truly salute Robinson without saluting his incredible wife of 33 years, Lynn. Washington, D.C. couldn't stop Robinson from being a Superior Court father. He would call his family nightly around 7. Like clockwork, Lynn would have the boys and her mother-in-law at the table, eating dinner. Those nights, the phone would be passed around so that Robinson could catch up on the day's events of his 3 boys, his wife, and his mother. His 3 sons are truly blessed to have a father who cares deeply about their lives. On the weekends, he frequently played basketball, tennis, or chess with the boys. He also set a good example by dragging them to church every Sunday, which was followed that evening by calisthenics in the living room during the Lawrence Welk show. A man who easily cries when Duke wins a down-to-the-wire basketball game, when he sees a touching movie, when he hears accolades of former students, when he thinks about his remarkable parents, when his family comes together. We, his 3 sons, have been blessed to have a father like Robinson, and anyone who's ever met him has had the pleasure of meeting a true friend. Robinson Oscar Everett.
If you couldn't be with us for part 1 or part 2, I sure hope you were able to see today part 3, the amazing life early on as well as the last 17 or 18 minutes highlighted in that video. His heart's a heart of gold. He's made a commitment to so many, and he continues to make that commitment. Robinson Oscar Everett.